All right, excellent.
Good evening, listeners, and thank you for joining us on this program and on this challenge that we have embarked on. Can you fix Nigeria? We are hosting the event for the 8th week. This is going to be our 8th recording. And with me tonight, I have Mr. Akintayo Bamisaye, who is a public servant in Abuja. Mr. Bamisaye, welcome to the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and good evening, listeners. How are you all doing?
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Tonight we're discussing about the educational challenges in Nigeria, and I'm going to just open up the discussion itself by asking you to just give us a very brief background of what kind of educational system we run in Nigeria today. When you and I went to school, we used to run what they call the 6334 system. What is the system that we run today? Can you just summarize for our listeners?
Okay, thank you for that. So, before I do that, I'll just like to commend the thinking and the initiative behind the Can You Fix Nigeria challenge and these line of discussions. Like I'd mentioned, it's important that for anything that you're going to, any activity you want to embark upon, it is subjected to significant rigor, mental rigor, and discourse, because the outcome of that is what will give you the blueprint for you to go ahead and take action. So if you don't discuss something properly and extensively exhaust all the various angles, whatever line of action you want to undertake will be futile, or at very best you will not be able to make the most of it. So it's important that we're having these discussions, and we need to be having them consistently on all the various issues in all the topical areas and across a wide range, of people, of stakeholders, so that we can exhaustively look at all the various angles affected and then come up with a solution. So I want to commend you and commend everyone who has been part of this. It's very important that we do this. Regarding the educational system in Nigeria, like you mentioned, when we were in school or when we started our education, that was in the mid-80s thereabout. We someone like you, maybe early 80s, we used to do 6 years in the primary school, but by the time we were getting into secondary school, the mid-80s thereabout, the Minister of Education at the time, Professor Babatunde Ali Pakwa, started what we call the 6334 educational system, whereby the first 6 years will be in the primary school, the next 3 years will be what you call junior secondary school, and the next 3 years senior secondary school, then 4 years tertiary educational system, minimum 4 years tertiary educational system. It could be more depending on the course of study. Yeah. So ultimately, you end up spending some 16 years thereabout.
Correct.
In the educational system, 6 plus 3, 9, 9 plus 3, 12, 12 plus 4, 16. So that was what we got to know. But as recently as maybe some 10 years ago, this is 2020 now, as at 2020 or so, I realized that this system has evolved somewhat, whereby what we now have is no longer described that way. It's now described for the most part as a loosely now as a 934 educational system, whereby you spend, so the first 6 and 3 have been like merged together. So it is taken that when you start your primary education, it flows as it were. It extends. Well, it's not called primary education, but is the basic educational system.
Basic education.
And you have it for 9 years. So primary school and the junior secondary school. So at the end of the 3rd year of your former junior secondary school, or your 9th grade, you do what you call the BEC exam, which is a basic educational certificate examination, which is like you have gotten the basic educational requirement or credential. Remember, we used to have what we call the primary school leaving certificate at the end of primary 6.
Correct. Correct.
So, but for the most part, that's no longer there. For the most part, what you now have is at the end of the 9th grade, you now have the BECE, which is the Basic Educational Certificate Examination, which you write and all that. So that has
makes
been
a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, because that seems to line up with what people are doing across the globe anyway, even in the US or in the UK. Yeah, so that lines up, actually, makes a lot of sense.
So for the most part, if you don't want to continue along an academic educational line, you are supposed to be empowered enough to learn a trade, to still find your way in life without being disadvantaged, as it were. You have the basic educational requirements that you need. So that's the thinking from what this is what I have gathered from looking around at the system and trying to understand what it is.
I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because basically you're saying to me, you get after those 9 years, you have enough to continue to work, whether you want to continue an academic career or you want to continue in a vocation. At least you have the basic knowledge. Fantastic. All right. So let me take that. Let me follow up in a question on that then. Because you mentioned the issue of vocation. After that 3rd year, if you wanted to, after that those 9 years, if you wanted to do a vocation or you wanted to continue academic career, you could go either ways. When we were younger, you and I were younger, I don't know if you remember, we used to have what they call technical colleges, where you could send people who wanted to be plumbers, electricians, and those. Then we used to have those teacher training colleges. In fact, I remember as a kid, when I was in the public primary schools, those training teachers used to come from those teacher training colleges to come and support our own teachers. Do you understand? So now the question is, do we still have those kind of systems in Nigeria today? Whatever happened to those teacher training colleges, those technical colleges where we used to train people in vocations? Whatever happened to them? Are they still there? Is that opportunity still there for the youth of today?
Now it's interesting you mentioned these. And I mean, as you mentioned in my mind, I was like, it's interesting. First of all those structures are still there. All those schools, for the most part, are still there. So you have the same way you have federal government colleges, you still have federal science technical colleges.
Exactly.
They are still very much there. They are very much there. They have students, they have teachers, they have people on payroll, they have principals. They're very, very, very much there all across the country. They're all there. Teacher training colleges, I think we don't have teacher training colleges like we used to in those days because, well, I'm not sure. So don't let me speak with certainty about what I'm on the teacher training colleges. But the FSTCs, we have them. We have them. I mean, we have them. They're all there. Now, what has happened for me is the fact that they are the general societal decline and this general we no longer use structures and systems for what they've been set up has now affected even those structures that you speak about.
That you're talking about.
So federal science technical colleges that were supposed to be places where you could actually be empowered in an area of skill or an area of vocation, and you can hold your head high and actually learn a trade. Now, how much of that kind of skilled learning are you able to actually get? Whereby you can where a parent can actually send his or her daughter or son and know that, okay, they are getting sound first-class education that will stand them out, to become a skilled mason or a skilled tiler or a skilled plumber or a skilled welder and all of that. How? Because the truth is that, of late, I came to realize that you and I, people like you and I, we actually had a big dysfunction. We were so focused on this book learning. 2 + 2 is 4. 4 + 4 is 8.
Now
For the most part, we didn't learn any trade.
DIY skills.
It's our girls, our equivalent girls who at least they got to learn how to sew, they got to learn how to cook, they got to learn some handicraft. But us boys, we didn't, and I'm not going to blame anybody.
Akin,
We didn't.
you're absolutely right. I mean, when I first moved to the UK, I struggled a lot because all our friends who are white, they had DIY skills. If there was something wrong with their block, they could do block work, they could do carpentry work, they knew how to use benches, they knew how to use all the engineering tools. I mean, wrenches, saws, and all of that. We didn't know how to do any of that because we did not pick those skills up. Do you understand?
Yeah, it was looked down upon as being for people who didn't go to school.
Correct.
So you had to go to school to show, so those structures that you mentioned, they are there. But are they now being used to do what they were set up to do? How much impact are they able to have so that people can, there are people who have set up companies. I mean, we're running a company, and we need certain level of skills,
Correct.
to help us out with the work. Can we get of these places to work with us, knowing fully well that they will have the necessary skills that we require, or we have to bring people from anywhere and try and train them to whatever level? So yeah, and those struggles, not only are they there, there are budgets for them on an annual basis. I mean, do you know that teachers in public institutions are better paid than private school teachers?
Seriously?
In the country? Seriously. In terms of salary, remuneration,
Okay.
teachers, you get, so for example, at the primary school level, the teachers, the like for like, public schools, public teachers, they actually get comparable pay
Better pay.
to the private sector. But the private school owners, they get a bang for their buck. So even if the private school is paying you 50,000, you will work for that 50,000.
You work for it.
They will sweat you.
You're right.
Will make that money come out. But public schools, they don't hold. Nobody's holding anybody accountable for their time. For their service and all of that. So the issue is that are the institutions, being made to deliver on what they've been set up to deliver?
To deliver.
Because they're all still there.
I see.
They're all still there.
I see what you mean. So let's take this then. So that's on the vocational side. Now let's go to the academic track then. So what I've noticed now, Akin, of late in Nigeria is that, at least in the Southwest, in Lagos, where I'm more familiar, right? What I notice is that all the private schools, like you mentioned, they are running Nigeria. I mean, they are running SAT. They're either training the kids for SAT, for SATs, or GCSEs, or IB. And I'm worried that, the public schools are not able to do that. They're only training their kids for WAEC and NECO. So first question, there are two questions I wanted to ask you. Is the private educational system undermining our overall educational system? This is question number one. And number two, how can we bridge this gap where it seems that we're training some kids for IB, GCSE SATs versus where we're training our locals only for WAEC and NECO? How do you see this? How can we bridge this gap? I know it's a bit convoluted as a question, but please help me shed some more light on this.
Okay, so thank you very much. So with regards to the track, the academic track that the private schools are taking, you find out that many of them, I mean, they need to be able to compete, and they need to be able to make to stand out, and make their offering very attractive to those who are going to attend. So they need to enrich it, and add and ensure that they have offerings that are robust and can inspire confidence in us parents who want to send our children there. But for the most part, whether you run a private school or whatever kind of school you run, once you're running your school in Nigeria, right, and you're running it, once you're running your school in Nigeria, for the most part, you must comply with guidelines as issued by our educational authorities.
Correct.
So we have what you call the NERDs, in Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council. They continually research the curriculum that is being used for academic development across all the various levels of our academic schooling system, and they come up with the subjects and so on and so on. I was mentioning yesterday that Civic, for example, is a subject that we never knew any such thing existed in our time. It's an existing subject of learning today as we speak. You know, you have all manner of subjects, you know, today in the curriculum for the secondary education. You know, you have different courses that have now emerged because there's a body that is watching over that. So as a private school, whether you want to target the American tertiary, so I'm speaking regarding the secondary school educational system now.
Correct.
If you're a private secondary school and you want to be skewed towards the American system, yes, you offer, you make sure that your students are ready to take on SAT when they're done and all that, but you cannot deviate from the Nigerian curriculum. You cannot not have in fact, you won't even get your approval as a school.
Okay.
Know, and you won't even get all of that. So there's a limit. You can't deviate. So, but the only places that are exceptions are, so you have some schools that are like the schools for the diplomats. So you have like a French
like
school,
the American
you have many of these agencies. You know, so for those kind of schools, they are not, as it were, Nigerian schools. They are schools. So but us, you know, us Nigerians now, we like to go to those schools as well. We like to send our children there because you know, it sounds nice. Oh, my son's in French school. Yeah, he speaks good French right now. Yeah, and all that. You know, but for the most part, most schools are, you know, you need to comply. Yeah.
Okay, comply. I see. Thank you. Okay, so then let me ask you then, let's go. So you've just addressed the issues as it relates to secondary school. Thank you very much for that. Now, when we started this discussion, we were talking about people having universal basic education, particularly up to that grade 9, which makes a lot of sense. You have talked about the secondary school level. Now, let's talk about the tertiary level. So there are quite a number of issues also there, you know.
When you mentioned that, my heart, I was like, oh, my heart, tertiary education.
No, but you know, but there are a lot of things that worry me about our tertiary institutions. Okay, so we have always had these dichotomies about polytechnics versus universities. This is one issue. We have this never seemingly unending ASU strike, you know, that never seems to end. Then number 3, there's also seems to be a lot of politics these days at the federal level. I was watching my alma mater, the University of Lagos, and how dirty the Senate was treating themselves, treating the VC, the chairman of the council. It was a mess that went on for such a long time. Those were things I never used to hear, you know, about the ivory towers in Nigeria. So what is happening at our tertiary level, and how can we correct the ills of it?
Yeah, you know, in all honesty, right? I can't say yay, I can't say nay regarding our tertiary educational system. Interestingly, my mom retired a few years ago as a professor of education from Nigeria's premier university, University of
Ibadan.
You know, and yeah, she could have stayed on. She could have stayed on for another 5 years because her retirement age was 70.
Okay.
But she called me aside. But she chose to retire at 65. She called me aside. She said, look, the truth is, at 65, what value am I adding to the system? How many research works am I going to do at this age that is relevant, that is applicable to the current needs on ground? I'm going to be honest with myself. The younger professors, the younger lecturers, they should take on the challenge of new research, of relevant work. Now look, she's too old to start doing new stuff. Now look, she's leaving the system. And she has contemporaries who are still there, who are waiting for 1 more year, who are waiting for 2 more years now. She's not yet 70. You know, so it struck me that she could come at it from that point of view. She wasn't looking at it from the point of, oh, let me just earn my pay and all that.
Money, yeah.
How much relevance am I? How much impact am I able to make at this stage of life? Look, I've my best. I've given my best. Let me move on.
My best already.
So I'm just going to say there are many areas to really address, to talk about on this tertiary education education side.
Okay, so let me bottom line it for you, Akin. If you are appointed Minister of Education, how would you address educational problem?
I will humbly take a bow and decline, because I don't know. I will humbly take a bow because you see, well, okay, let me not say I will decline, but yeah, if I could, I'll narrow down on a particular area and try to resolve that area, because it's not something that I think anyone was going to handle at once. So, for example, while Fashola was Minister of Power, at the onset of this administration, they started this talk with Siemens and all of that, and they've been able to sign a deal with Siemens. The full details of it, I don't know, but it appears that there's some kind of silver lining in that cloud, not because it's Siemens, but at least the I don't know. It looks like there could just be something.
I work in that sector. So Siemens is doing what Nigeria is asking them to do. They're doing something similar right now in Egypt. There's an Egyptian project going on for 40,000 megawatt or 4,000 gigawatts, somewhere there in Egypt. So that project is going on now. And I think Nigeria wants to do something similar. But I'm going to have one of these sessions on infrastructure and power and infrastructure next week with an expert on the subject, actually. So I hope
yeah, that would be great. So, I mean, in education, maybe someone coming in can tackle an aspect of it that way. So you asked me a question: if I'm appointed Minister of Education, what would I do? I'll look for one of the areas that I believe can be addressed and fixed, and I'll focus on that and fix it within whatever time period I have. Like, I mean, one thing that we had from Oliko Ransom Kuti when he was Minister of Health, for example.
Correct.
The basic healthcare, primary healthcare service delivery. He tried to put a structure in place, and we had an agency called the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. And
correct.
I mean, but for the most part, healthcare, the basic healthcare you need covers 70-80% of health requirements.
Absolutely.
So if you sort that out, for the most part many of the issues before you now get on to more complex issues. So regarding education, which are the areas that we can fix? I think the primary education is one area that we need to sort out. The quality of education has been determined. Then some issues that affect education that are not educationally related. For example, we have about 10 million out of school children in northern Nigeria alone. How do we ensure that we get
them back to school?
We get them into school. So the discussion is not primarily about education. It is a socio-cultural discussion. So how do we connect with that particular?
Correct.
Because it's a problem. That problem is a big problem.
It's a big
education is affected. But how do we bring these children into school? You understand? How do we ensure that if you're a Nigerian child and you are age 5, between ages 5 to 11, we can, as a state, as a nation state, we can account for how you are being educated. We, as a nation state, what do we need to put in place?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not a politician coming up and saying, I built X number of schools, or now it's virtual. No, how do we account for our children? Like you mentioned Sweden earlier on, and how they didn't go on lockdown. Sweden, Finland, the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and then the guys around them, Finland, all these guys, their educational systems are at another level entirely. Those guys, they've gotten something right, in terms of their education for their children.
You are right.
So those are the kind of things that we need to put in place.
In Finland, for example, is that teachers are the highest paid professionals in Finland. That's part of the issue.
In fact, last year they scrapped their audit, the audit component of their school's board. So they no longer need audit. Why? Because to be a teacher, you have a master's and you have the capacity to self-audit.
Exactly.
So they find no longer any need for an audit body. So as a teacher, one of the things you do is you do self-audit, and they strengthen themselves and submit your report. And because of the kind of society they have, it's more, there's no need to, it's not punitive. When you do something wrong, nobody's trying to punish you or make life.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, are you still there?
I'm with you.
Yeah. So nobody is trying to deal with you in a punitive manner. You understand? So for the most part, you find that they're able to do their jobs, and when they make mistakes or get something wrong, they will report themselves. So the system is improved on a daily basis. So for me, we need to look at things from that point of view. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah. So I think you've raised one or two key issues now. Let me ask you two questions, and then because I'm also watchful of the time. Two questions. Number one, so you gave the example of 10 million kids who are out of school. We've talked about this Almajiri system in the North for such a long time, and that we need to do something about it. But then it comes down to funding. So I was looking at how much percentage of our budget we're using to fund education. I believe in this year is 5.6%. Typically, we're expected to put about 12% there. Do you understand? Give or take. Now, so we're spending about 5.6%. My question is, if you bring in this 10 million, obviously we need a lot more money as well. So the question is, how do we fund this education? This is one question I wanted to ask you.
Then the second, I speak to that? Before you go to the second, let me speak to that.
Speak to that, and then we'll come to the second question.
You see, the first thing is this. I don't like attacking problems, first of all, from the funding point of view, because it immediately brings a mental block.
A mental block.
I found that when you start talking about the problem and then you immediately go to funding, it immediately brings about a mental block.
Okay.
So if we say we have 10 million children out of school, 10.1 million children out of school in northern Nigeria, and let's say across the country, let's say we have some 14, 15, for the purpose of this conversation. I'm not saying that number. Let's say we have 14, 15 million children out of school in Nigeria. I think what we need to consider, one, what are the reasons why they're out of school? If we know the reasons why they're out of school, are they cultural issues?
Yeah.
Are they economic? Because of lack of? Are they economic issues? You know, if we take one or two steps to do some deeper analysis, we will see how why those numbers are the way they are. Because I'm sorry, but I don't align with United Nations numbers in the first.
I'm sorry to interject you there, but I was just going to support the point that you've just made. I read a book on Lula from Brazil recently.
Yes, that's my guy.
And Lula brought out, they're saying that he's done the most successful social welfare program in the last 20 or 30 years. Bringing
30 million people out of poverty. 30 million,
yeah, out of poverty. And how did they do it? They were bringing kids to school, were not going to school, but they paid their parents. They only paid their parents money or gave them social welfare on the condition that those children went to school. So there are ways to do it. Like you're saying, we need to understand the cultural and social issues, address those, and link it to the education of these children. This is the point.
Because one key problem too is this. Look at, and I'll go back, I'll pivot to the power issue and then come back to education. We've thrown billions of naira to the power problem in this country.
Correct.
I don't doubt that we've probably spent more money, to generate 1 gigawatt
than anybody else in the world.
Than anybody else. But we probably have less to show. Sure. So if we start the discussion on, funding, we get lost in that, and it presents the scavengers with an opportunity again to dive in, and then they come for the honeypot, grab it, and move on, and we are left worse off than we were. So for me, first of all, we have a problem regarding our education. What are our cultural hurdles and challenges that we need to even overcome? Why are there so many? So the Almajiri issue has been addressed in the north. Many northern governors are trying to do things, because they see that it's not only about the children being out of school. The children they've now become an army that is biting their political relevance. So in their own enlightened self-interest, they need to do something about it. So whichever way it works for everybody, if something is being done about it. So we need to investigate it a little bit more. Then for each of the areas, regions, zones, look at how and this one is where we now need to be honest and have the will to do. I don't believe that the first thing is prepare budget, 2021 budget, bam, let it be 25% of our capital or of our recurrent. Let it go towards education. My brother, we won't see nothing. We won't see anything at the end of the day.
Okay.
So
I see your point there. I see your point.
Yeah. So if we want to, but we need to have the will to start to address the issues.
Okay.
A collective will across every level: federal, state,
and local,
societal, community level. We need to have. Well, if we can establish that will, then we can now start partnering. Okay, what's the federal government able to do? The states are in charge of their states. What is the state? The states have to be. They are the principals. What is each state doing?
What are the states doing?
Who are they? Who's going to partner with them? Yeah, who's going to partner with them? We need to understand the structures that are in place and work with those structures, or else we'll be angry. We'll raise up a lot of dust, but nothing will get done.
But we'll not
federal government will budget. We'll see 25%. We'll not get anything done. So we need to be very tactical and methodical about how we address some of the areas that we identify, that need to be addressed regarding.
Let me take the discussion slightly away from this now and come to a second issue. I'm also concerned about the quality of the people that we have in our public education systems right now. Now,
as what? As teachers or
as teachers and as administrators, but mainly I want to focus on the issue of teachers. I remember a video about maybe 7-8 years ago when Adams Oshiomhole had this encounter with a teacher in Edo State. Do you understand? And I remember what led to that, because basically he was trying to do an assessment of teachers to see the gaps with the view of getting them retrained. I remember Dr. Fahimi Nekiti also had that similar problem, around that time, to say, look, we need to restructure our education. And but first, for us to be able to do that, we need to assess what the gaps are. A number of governors, after seeing the problem that Fahimi and Oshiomhole went through, backed out of this thing. It seems that only El Rufai was able to do this successfully in Kaduna. Do you understand? To evaluate the teachers and then see where the gaps are and to retrain them. So now my question to you is this. Do we also on our own side as a society have a problem? Why do we have a problem with people retraining our teachers? Because it's clear that there are gaps and those gaps need to be filled.
It was the first, that stems from the very first thing that we opened this conversation with. There's lack of trust of government. You see, if government says go left, everybody is instantly suspicious.
There's something wrong there.
There's something wrong. There's something going wrong there because there's an ulterior motive. The trust, there's such a wide trust deficit in what government wants to say or wants to do that the best intentioned programs will first of all be taken with a pinch of salt. So the first thing for any government, you see, and unfortunately also many of our principals in governance, governors and so on, they want to do things, even the ones that are well-meaning, they want to do things in a hurry. They want to do things without taking cognizance of the environment in which they have come up or come through. They just think, people should just accept what they said because they're
what they said to them.
Unfortunately, there are many things that, like my mom would say, there's so many things that have happened before that you just can't start your journey like that way. You need to, it's like someone who wants to go from Abuja to Lagos by road, and you find that the first thing is not really about buying flight tickets. You need to consult, for example, with, who is my neighbor who is here? I need to talk to him and tell him I'm not going to be around for the next few days.
Correct.
Then I need to tell you need to coming from.
I'm with you, Aki.
Yeah, he was going to move his company from California to Atlanta, and he had to do a lot of working with the people, his staff. He had to do a whole lot of that. It took like a year. But ultimately, about 90% of the staff went with him on the journey, moving their families.
Correct.
So when a new government comes in and they say, we want to retrain our teachers, they need to understand that you just don't say you want to retrain your teachers. Because the last time someone said something like that, he wanted to retrench people. He wanted to get money out from the system and use it for his own political agenda. So there are all manner of things that you need to consider when you want to embark on those kind of initiatives. It's not, you just don't abruptly go in. So I think part of many of those things need to be properly structured and well thought through. Given what environment we are in and given the kind of things that we have encountered in the past, if someone says, if I'm appointed as the Commissioner for Education in a state and I go to my principal with a proposal like this, I'll say, Oga, you have 4 years. The truth is that the most you can speak about is that if I have 4 years, you can't even speak about it because you don't know if you're going to be there that long. So what we can do, sir, what the program we need to create, we need to just put something in place that we let the people buy into what we are trying to do. You just don't come up and say you want to retrain teachers. It's not fair. Their psyche has been brutalized by previous administrations. Many of them, they've been on the same salaries for years, and they've seen some of their own colleagues in other places progress. But they've stayed with a system, and you now say you want to come and retrain, you want to come and evaluate and get out those who are not fit. And they're like, they know, of course, that's a threat to them. They know, but they were in the system because some of them believed, and the system has now dealt with them in a backhanded manner. And now you want to come. So there are many things to really consider. You just don't come up with this kind of abrupt programs, because truth is, and that's how you get the kind of backlash that you've been getting. Someone like El Rufai, what you probably got with him is, El Rufai is a very tough cookie. So he's by fire, by force. But things don't have to be that way, because we need to think of our people. If what we're doing is really people-centered, we need to think about the people. How do we bring them into the system? Yes, there will always be people who are,
I thank you so much for this. I've basically run out of time, but it's a very good discussion. We've already been on this discussion for 30 minutes. I really appreciate this. We need to continue the discussion offline. Please feel free to, you and I will continue the discussion, but please feel free to share with your friends. We want them to continue this discussion, and we will continue this challenge. This challenge is going on for 30 weeks. We're trying to take different sectors for the next 30 weeks. We're only on week 8 now. So please, we'll be coming back to you at some other time. And thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And my regards to all our listeners out there. Thank you so much. We will fix Nigeria by the grace of God. We will fix Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.